Hey guys, so a couple things. I updated the website with the latest real estate data from Redfin. It's for their metros, there's hundreds of them. And I also updated the latest labor data model that is also over there. It's through May, those are the most recent numbers. But the reason I do that is I wish people would just be maybe a little bit more informed and rather than maybe just kind of listen to a talking head on TV, go straight to the source, look at that information. I think it's configured in a way that allows you to analyze it very quickly, but that's my opinion. So do with that what you will. But look, the reason I really wanted to make this video is to talk about this idea of mobility and how it is tricking, I would say, in addition to some other factors, and into people believing that, say, a lot of these inventory trends that you're seeing in something like listings for sale move a lot higher in the Sun Belt versus maybe, say, like the Northeast and the Midwest, and why it's really just a timing issue. And how mobility plays into that. So, what do I mean by mobility? There are measures around like households in the population that ask people like, okay, uh, for the last 12 months, have you lived in the same house? Okay, people respond accordingly. Well, what if those circumstances don't apply to you in the past 12 months? Well, maybe you moved within, say, a county. Maybe you moved from a different county within the same state into the county of interest, or maybe you move from out of state, or maybe you move from abroad, say like internationally. Um, Look, those residual categories you can think of broadly speaking as mobility, okay? And when you analyze that data at a local level over time and you normalize it, what you are going to see, okay, is that in general, a lot of these Northeast and Midwest markets, people are just less mobile on a relative basis. Okay. So, on top of the fact that they just build less, in many of the Northeast and Midwest markets, that creates a scenario where something like inventory for sale, okay, is just going to be lower because of the inherent bottlenecks that creates, in addition to like investor activity and things of that nature. Um, Look, we're talking really about kind of like turnover and churn and what could conceivably uh, cause listings for sale to move higher. And it does get back to this idea of people transacting. I mean, if it's just relatively lower in a lot of these markets where people just remain in their homes, a larger share of them do than, say, some of these other areas, um, that is mathematically going to cause something like just listings for sale to say maybe be lower. And what you're seeing now is like in many of those areas, like either inventory for sale is either bottom, maybe it's moving like slightly higher, but it's the rate of change just looks different, and that's because of these trends. You also just have like this cost of living arbitrage that is influencing not only speculative behavior, I would argue, but just people are just trying to figure out more often than not a cheaper place to live, and they'll see maybe home prices in like Buffalo, New York, for example, and think, oh, well, it's like what, $250,000, give or take. Uh, and they'll say, well, it's cheap. Okay, well, on a nominal basis, that may be right, but relative to what? It is always relative to what? The what is incomes, okay? And what you see even there is that there is a reason the price is much lower, but DTIs have moved higher there as well. So it's just kind of laughable. Look, there are a lot of other factors that people need to be considering, even when looking at mobility measures. Maybe the flow, is it from or to? You also need to look at things like the components of population change. What I'm really referring to is net migration, and even like things like county to county migration flows. All of these things sort of work together to really making sense of maybe say who is moving into a given area. What is their age? What's their income? Maybe even what is the race of these people? What is their marital status? Even those iterations go on and on and on. What does mobility look like by tenure? So renters versus homeowners. I mean, in general, renters tend to be more mobile than homeowners. If you wanted to think about it, like just in terms of like a lease term versus a mortgage, I feel like that's relatively intuitive. But look, I'm going to get more into this in a proper, longhand form. I'm going to put like a little post out about this over on Substack to get into it a bit more. But if you want to just take a step back and think about this, just the math of it, why that would be happening, why the rate of change on listings for sale is just relatively low. It is big part of it's due to mobility. You have this building, there's just less relative building in a lot of those areas. And you just have like speculation, this cost of living arbitrage, as I alluded to, just happening there. So that's what I mean when I say it's just unwinding at varying rates of change across the country. Doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but that's the math. So, and again, the math is the only thing that really matters. So, better to know than not know.